everybody, welcome back to my channel, unless of course you're new here, in which case hi, hello, my name is Ashley and welcome to my random little corner of the internet. As you can tell from today's title, we're going to go over my top 11 books from last year. Usually it's 10. I couldn't leave off this last one. I couldn't figure out exactly, it was a jumble at the end. But I think I'm going to go with my top 11, because it's my books and my year and my channel, and I do what I want. So, I did try to put them in order as best as I can. We're going to start at 11, go down. Do I remember, enough details to really tell you guys about this book? Or these books? Some of them? Some of them, pure vibes that I'm still thinking about. So, without further ado, first book, which is number 11 for the year, it's going to be Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. This is a sequel to The House on the Cerulean Sea. It follows our two main characters. Well, I really say two main characters. There's lots of main characters. But Arthur and Linus. Arthur is a phoenix. And he runs this orphanage of these dangerous children out on an island up north somewhere. And Linus is a social worker that has to come check on the kids. That all happens in book 1. Well, book 2, at the end of book 1, they fall in love and they want to get married. Book 2, they've decided they're going to adopt all the kids. 7 kids, I think. There's 7. I keep saying 7, and I can't remember if it's 7 or 5. That could be wrong in general. It doesn't say it on the tab. But anyways, I'm going to put it on screen if whatever number is correct. However, if you've ever tried to adopt anybody, or you know anything about the adoption process, it's not an easy thing to do for one single child. On top of gay couples have a harder time with it. On top of Arthur is a phoenix, so he's considered dangerous. And then all the kids are considered the most dangerous children in the world, even though one of them is just a freaking pile of goo. And he is the best bellhop ever. Here's some fan art of him. He's so cute. Anyways, so this book gets a lot more red tapey, political administrativeness to it, because the lady who really doesn't want them to be able to adopt them shows up, or she sends somebody to observe, to make sure this house is, good enough for these kids to live in type situation. And the kids don't like it. So they act like kids, because that's all they are. So they're just kids. And it's sweet and it's wholesome and it's lovely, and all the love to Arthur and Linus and all of their children and all of the city that they live. The island is here and then the city is here, and they have to take a ferry back and forth to get supplies and stuff. The city was not very nice to them in the first book, and they redeemed themselves in this one, and it's lovely. Okay, book number 10 is also a sequel. Is The Gifts That Bind Us by Carol Ann O'Donoghue. Loved the first book. The first book we follow Maeve, who got detention and had to clean a storage closet at the school and found a deck of tarot cards, and she was just trying to make money off of doing readings for friends and between classes, and then she got in trouble for that. And then the tarot cards ended up actually being magical, and then magic powers happened, and then dark, deep backstories of towns and people missing, and all kinds of stuff happened. And then at the end of the book, they ended up with magic powers. Well, in this book, more magic powers. And they're intensifying. But then there's a group that was in the first book that's still in this one called the Children of Brigid. And they just want their powers. And then it turns out the school is a well of power. And people are forgetting things. And it's so intense. Maeve's boyfriend, why can't I ever remember his name? Their name? Ro, goes to move off to college, and then he starts forgetting things. He thinks that, saying they have magical powers is all just based on trauma, because Lily was in the river and they had to get her out in trauma. And so he legitimately forgets he has powers and therefore doesn't have powers. And it was just a whole bunch. And it was crazy. And then Maeve was starting to freak out because what if Rogue just forgets her and teenage drama, but also magic. And it's great. And I can't wait to read the third one. Like, this just, I don't know, something, like, they're intense. They're not at all cozy, but, like, this group, like, I want to be friends with them. They're delightful, and it's just a fun time. Fun time, intense time. Shit gets real. But it's great, and I love it. Okay, number 9. Number 9 is a book that's on a lot of people's top lists this year, and that is One Dark Window by Rachel Gellig. I have not yet read the second book. I've heard it's a little different. I heard it doesn't follow the same couple, but that's okay. In this one, we have... So, if you have magic, that's not a good thing, because the king is the only one that wants to have, like, actual magic. But if you have tarot cards, these tarot cards can grant you magic. Like, if you're holding these cards, you can have magic. Like, the main character's cousin... The main character's name is Elspeth. And her cousin at one point in time is holding a card that grants her, like, better looks. Like, not, like, crazy, but she just looks nicer. And then... I am forgetting every single card. But Elspeth actually does have magic. And she absorbed the death card, nightmare card. You would think that I would research these to make sure. Nightmare. She calls him Nightmare. So basically she can find all the other cards. She can see them. And obviously, that's kind of a power the king would want because he wants to find all the cards and have all the magic. And then if they find all the cards, then something else, some ritual can happen, and it's just... So, but then the princes are trying to overthrow the king, and so they keep Elspeth's secret to herself, and there's a love story, which is obviously great, and it just... I was hesitant to read it. I think I talked about this when I did the wrap-up for whatever month that I read it. I was hesitant to read it, because I thought it was going to be spooky. It wasn't. It had a spook element to it, but it was very cutesy, and I loved it. I use the word cutesy. I don't say cutesy. I think my 11-year-old is rubbing off on me, but that's okay. I loved it so much. It's number 9. See, I'm getting worse at remembering what these books are about. Okay, so, Brandon Sanderson, we all know who he is. We all know that he writes like he's running out of time. He writes these massive books. They're all great, and he just keeps going, and he's releasing like 4 books a year, and I'm not convinced he's a real human being. I see him. I see him on TikTok. I know he, like, exists. But I'm also positive he might be like an android or something. There's no way this man can just pump these books out like this. However, I have not stepped into, I've not gotten into, the Cosmere? I don't think this particular book is part of that. I'm not sure. But this series is my first step into the Brandon Sanderson world. And that was Skyward. I have since read Skyward, and then the second one is Starsight. I've read the first 2. I've not read the third one yet. And then I think there's a 4th one, actually. Again, I loved it. And this is why I think he might not be a real human being. Like, how do you... Not only are you pumping these books out, but they are loved, and they are well written, and they are top tier, and you're just pumping them out. What? So here we follow Spensa, who wants to be a pilot, but her dad was a pilot, and by the twist of the government, because we know how they are, he was branded a traitor because some things happened. And from what the story that's being spun is that they were in a fight with the aliens, and he decided to get out of there and abandon his fleet, and therefore he was branded a traitor. Everyone died except for his co-person and then one other person. So his co-person is now the dean of the flight school, and then the other person is the teacher. I might have those back up. So Spencer really wants to be a pilot. She has to work really, really hard to overcome everybody just thinking that her dad was a traitor. And so, like, the dean doesn't want her to be there, but the teacher's like, no, I really do think that you need to be here. And so then, on top of working extra hard to just get her own spot there and to be able to train and be a pilot like she's wanted to her entire life, she's also got to uncover of whether or not the story that the government is spinning is actually true or not, and whether or not her dad was in fact a traitor, and who are these alien things that we're fighting. All of that unravels a little bit. We like start pulling the string at the end of this one, and really gets unraveled, and we find out who these aliens are and things like that in the second book. Both of them were phenomenal. I went ahead and put this one on my list, but both of them were just great, and I cannot wait to read Cytonic, because I feel like it's going to wrap it up, but then there's a fourth one, so maybe it doesn't wrap it up. I wonder what happens in that one. It's going to be exciting either way. I'm going to love it. It's going to be great. This was phenomenal, and I'm scared to really get into Brandon Sanderson, because I know there's so many books, and there's so many ways to read it. Like, there's like timelines that it's like you can follow it this way or you can follow it that way. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe eventually. My goal for this year is still to work on what I have owned. And this is the only series of him that I own, so we shall see what happens. We will see what happens. Okay. 11, 10, 9, 8. 11, 10, 9, 8. So we are on number 7. Number 7 is probably, no. There's one other not fantasy. This is the first of 2 that are not anything fantasy. And that's going to be, God, come on. Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. This was the cutest friggin' book. Are you kidding me? So we have, again, names are bad. We have Riley, this adorable little blonde with the lyre here. And then I think his name is Nathan. So Riley snuck out with her friend to go, they stole Mom's car and they went to a Broadway show. I know, rebels, right? But it was like 3 hours away. Neither of them had their driver's license. They didn't get in trouble by like the law. They got there and they got back safely. But obviously they did get in trouble once they got home, and Mom realized, hey, you stole my car and you're not legal to drive. So now she's grounded, which might put in jeopardy the fact that she was supposed to be like the stage manager for the senior play. That's all she wants to do with her life. And that might be in jeopardy because now she's grounded. And on top of the fact that she has to work at her dad's game store, her parents are divorced because Dad only ever wanted to be at this game store. And it's like his little baby. So he works at a game store, exactly what you would think a game store is. You know, just all of the weird board game, not weird, but like over-the-top board games that take hours and hours to play. Obviously D&D as well. There's a room in the back of the shop that, you know, people do come in and play D&D, and that's where she meets Nathan. Well, Nathan actually works for her dad. He works there at the shop, but he also is part of this D&D group that's in the back. And so she does not want to be there. She does not want to help work. And Nathan, like, devises a plan that, hey, like, if you want to join our group, you're technically still here, but you're not working. And then Nathan likes this other girl that's part of the group, and so there's a fake dating aspect because, like, Riley's like, well, I'll pretend to be dating you so that this other girl, I don't remember her name, she doesn't really matter. But maybe, you know, if we're acting like we're dating, she's going to get jealous and whatever. So that starts happening, and then obviously, like any other fake dating situation, they fall for each other, and it's great. And then the next book that I don't think it follows these guys, but it's got the same energy, came out January 1st. I wasn't aware that it came out that soon, and I need to get it, and it's called Dating and Dragons, and I'm excited for that one too. But this was so cute. It wasn't very long, but it was very cute. And then, like I said, this is the only, like, cutesy, fun, contemporary read on this list. He likes musical theater, Dungeons and Dragons, fake dating. It's right here. It's cute and it's lovely, and you should read this one. Alright, number 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, number 6 is the other book that is not a fantasy, but it's also not, like, super cutesy either. We've got The Verifiers by Jane Peck. So this is the first one. The second one is also, they're together, but I don't physically own the second book. I had an e-arc of it from NetGalley. The second book is called The Rivals, and they both follow Claudia. I know her first name is Claudia. That's all that really matters. Her name's Claudia Lynn, and she works for a place that, it's a secret, almost kind of detective agency, but essentially what it is that people who go on dating sites can contact the verifiers to do a more in-depth background check, and they might not be 100% on the up and up. They do some backdoor stuff in order to find out exactly, hey, these people that you're talking to, they are real, all that like that. With working with these guys, they do uncover a murder. One guy comes in and is like, hey, we were talking and it was fine, and then suddenly she stopped talking to me, and it's totally possible that she ghosted me, but maybe something else. And they do find out that, yeah, no, she got murdered, and then that leads to another, internal thing with, the dating sites, and then the dating sites have fake things in there to gather your information. It's a lot, but I really enjoyed it. I was so intrigued by just the mystery of it all. And, Claudia grew up watching mystery movies and things. There was a very specific character, but her and her mom would watch these all the time, and she thinks she's a little detective. She is in a very traditional Chinese family. I don't want to be racist. Yes. She is part of a very traditional Chinese family. It's just her mom, her brother, and her sister. And her brother is, straight tie, lovely girlfriend, things like that. Works for a business somewhere doing things with numbers. Her sister is... I don't know what her sister does, but she has a boyfriend. They're very nice, but they're having some issues. Claudia is a lesbian. She hasn't told her mom that because that would not be an okay thing with her mother. But her mother is also one of those moms. It's if you don't come see me every single day, it's because you don't love me. And so that all happens too. So there's the family issues on top of I also can't tell anybody what I do because it's their company is supposed to be very secretive. There's only 4 people that work there. And there's just... The Rivals was just as good. It ends up being that, Claudia and then one other woman that works at the company start owning the company because the former owner was connected to the plot of the taking people's information. And it's so much. I don't know if there's going to be a third one or if it's just a duology, but if there's a third one, I will read it because I'm intrigued. I need to know more. I feel like it could just keep going because it's like any other detective book or series where, things happen, people die, you gotta figure out why. Because, of course, someone dies in the second one, too, and you gotta find out why. It was great. So, yes, if you like mystery novels, if you like family issues, if you like secretive murder mysteries, this one's good. Alright, so number 5. I'm going to hold up 2 books. They are the same book. And I was not aware this was a thing. So my number 5 is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. However, in the UK, it was called The Crimson Moth. So here we go. It is the Crimson Moth series. So you can see right here it says The Crimson Moth, book 1. And then the second book is going to be called Rebel Witch. It's called Rebel Witch in both the US and the UK. I have 2 copies because I knew that this was the book we were getting in Fairy Loot. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. But then Book of the Month came out, and I was like, well, this one sounds really cool. And I wasn't paying attention to the author and the fact that it might, the synopsis sounded the same or anything. I just thought it was 2 different titles. Whatever. It happened. And it's great because I loved it. It was fantastic. We have an, I don't want to say enemies to lovers, but kind of enemies to lovers. I'm going to hold up this one. We have... I never remember names. Maybe that should be a goal this year, is that I remember more characters' names. So we have Rune. She is a witch, and she spends her nights basically being a vigilante to save other witches, because being a witch and having magic is not a good thing in the society that they currently live in. But she also, during the day, Rune is like this nice little socialite. Nobody knows she's a witch. And then there is Gideon. His name is Gideon. Gideon is a witch hunter. He used to work for the princess or queens. I think they might have all three been queens. They were sisters, and they were witches, and they used to like rule the world, and it got real bad. And so then they killed them. And Gideon used to work for them. And so he is like very strict on the witch hunting. And then he falls for Rune. And so like it's like almost enemies to lovers. I guess you could say that because they obviously are enemies. He's after her because he's after the Crimson Moth. He just doesn't know that it's Rune. And I cried. There was a whole almost like therapy session situation going on where they were discussing the traumas in their lives, and I was crying because it's like they're confessing their love for each other, but I knew it was going to happen because it's like you guys are against each other. You can't be together. So you really can't wait for Rebel, it's hard to say, Rebel Witch, because I know it's just going to be just as good, and it's going to be beautiful. If you liked Serpent and Dove, this is a good one, because it's going to be the same situation of like, there is no fake forced marriage or anything like that. It's just, but the witch hunter, witch aspect, love story situation. So yes, it's great. All right, number 4 is a final in a trilogy. Is Wisteria by Adalyn Grace. Oh, she already owns these. One of our prompts for the sister story swap that I think I talked about in another video is author with the same initials as you. But I think my sister owns these already, so whatever. Anyways, so number 4 is Wisteria by Adalyn Grace. I absolutely freaking love these books. I devoured, like, Belladonna, I read, I think, was 2023, like, the very last book I was reading in 2023. Like, literally fireworks were going off, and I was reading that, and my mind was being blown. It was great. And then I read Foxglove somewhere in 2024. Maybe. Or maybe it was Foxglove I don't know. Anyways, point being is I read Wisteria in 2024, and it's in my top 10 now. Top 11. And this one actually does end up following Blythe, who is our main character. Like, the first 2 books follow... It was doing good to remember Blythe. I can't remember. It's a very... I think it starts with an S. So in this one we follow Blythe, who is the cousin of the main character in the first 2. I can't remember her name. I'm pretty certain it starts with an S. But yeah, we follow Blythe in this one and the fact that she has now betrothed herself to Fate. And Fate is out looking for his wife, who is Life. Because in the first 2 books we follow Death, who's in love with our main character, and they have their own thing. And then Fate shows up in book 2, and he's looking for the love of his life, who is Life, like literally the entity of life. And he thinks that it's the main character in the first 2, and to save her cousin, Blythe betroths herself to him. And the whole book is like them trying to find out who Life is, but also set up, the fact that they are married now and they have to figure that out, and they kind of hate each other. And then plot twist. Yeah, it's not even really a plot twist because at the end of the second book you realize, no, that Blythe is Life. And it's great. And then it ended so beautifully. Like, there could be even a little novella. It just ended so sweetly. I cried at this one too. Love is great. But it's beautiful. But yes, I highly, highly recommend this series. This is a beautiful edition. I think this is just the basic edition. Like, the Barnes & Noble edition is, like, the Wisteria is white. But then, like, these end papers are beautiful. The art is good. And all of the Naked books are beautiful. They have little poems on them. It's great. But yeah, I absolutely adore this series. All right, number 3. I have fallen into I have a very specific trope that I am obsessed with. And that is witches or paranormal things in New Orleans. So, here we have some, it's not, okay, here we go. We'll hold it at this angle. So I have Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, which is about vampires in New Orleans. I really thought that I was like, I picked it up because I heard good things. But then at the same time, I was like, am I ever going to actually read it because am I out of my vampire phase? Vampire phase was Twilight in high school. And I really thought I was out. But this is fantastic. This is not shiny vampires in Washington. This is hot, sexy vampires in New Orleans. We have Celine, who comes to New Orleans to escape some things that happened in France where she lived before. And she comes to live in a convent in New Orleans along with some other girls. And then she's just a really good seamstress, fashion designer. And this lady comes to, they set up like little shops in the street to earn money for the church. And she shows up and she wants to have Celine make her more dresses. And so then she goes to this club and surprise, surprise, they might all be vampires. And then she meets Sebastian, who is like their leader, and he's hot. And they start like a little bantering, and it's great. I love it. I love the banter. I need to read the rest. I think there's 4 books in this series so far, and I've only read the first one. I only own the first one so far because I didn't know if I was gonna love it, and I do so much. So yeah, I need to get the rest of them. But yes, if you like vampires, if you like paranormal things in New Orleans like I do, it says on the back, it invoking the style of Anne Rice. So like Interview with a Vampire. There you go. Alrighty, book number 2. So we're getting there. We're almost to the top. This book sat at the top for the longest time until I read what was actually number 1. And I only have the first one in physical. I haven't bought the second one yet. I need to. I read it as an e-arc from NetGalley, but I'm going to show you the first book, and that is Blood Debts by Terry J. Benton Walker. However, I think I read this in 2023, so the actual book that's on my top is my number 2 this year. Is going to be Blood Justice, which is the sequel. And we follow Clement and Christina Trudeau, who are witches in New Orleans. See? Told you. There's a trope. They're witches in New Orleans. This one is more modern day. The Beautiful takes place in the 20s, I believe. No, I was way off. It takes place in 1872. But this one is very much more modern. We follow twins Christina and Clement. Clement. And their mom is not doing so well. Like, she's under what seems like a curse, maybe, because 30 years ago somebody died. And they blame this family, they blame the Trudeaus. And Grandma was the queen of the witches, and then so she got knocked down a peg because of they think that their family killed this girl, and then Mom is being hexed. There's just so much going on. So much going on. On top of the fact that in this particular storyline, only the black community has powers, and so for the affluent white community is like, hey, that's not fair. Why should you have powers and we don't have powers? So then there's this crazy white lady who just tries to take over everything, and at one point in time her son is dating Christina, and then he tries to take her powers, and that's all just, we could have done without her. But then I guess there would have been no real conflict on that side. And then there's also like gods. Somehow they summon a deity at some point, and he helps the family. And there's just so much going on. I'm not describing this well enough for as amazing as it is. Everybody needs to read these. And obviously there's going to be a third one, because the way the second one ended, that's not an ending. I need more. I need all of. But yes, Blood Debts and Blood Justice by Terry J. Benton Walker are fan-frickin-tastic. So if you like witches and New Orleans and family issues again and trauma, and there's LGBTQ rep, and there's I need to get better, but vibes are immaculate. Read this book. Okay, and number 1, you can probably see it in the corner of the screen, and that's totally fine. I received this book as an e-arc again on NetGalley, and then I bought it physically when it came out. It is a Easy Cat Press imprint from Bindery. That's the new imprint that like a lot of the influencers are using. And Easy Cat Press is Jason Headley. You know him on TikTok and BookTube and Instagram, and he's great and he's fun and he's hilarious. He's written his own books. He talks about board games, all like that. So the very first book that he chose to have published for his publishing thing is The House of Frank by Kay Sinclair. And this is oh my god, this is up here. Like, it's out of the screen. It's up here. As far as, like, my favorite books of all time. It is so beautiful. I don't know why it feels so heavy. It is so beautiful. We follow Saika, whose sister has died. And her last wish was that you take her ashes and you go bury them at the House of Frank. The House of Frank, it has this magical garden that you can plant your loved ones, and then they become part of this magical garden, and you can visit them all the time, and it's supposed to be like a loving situation. Basically, Saika doesn't wanna, because then that means that her sister is really gone, and she thinks that it's her fault that her sister's gone in the first place. So she goes to the House of Frank, and she meets Frank, who is just this big ball of fur, literally. I kind of interacted a little with Kay on Instagram, and I created a fan cast. I told her that when I was reading about Frank, I either thought Kelsey Grammer as the Beast from X-Men, but orange, because Frank is orange, or, like, Brian Tyrese Henry as like a big ball of orange fur. And then, so, obviously, he's some sort of weird, I forget what they call him exactly, but he's a big ball of orange fur. And then there's also a pixie, there's also some cupids, there's multiple witches, so it is a very, we'll say magical realism, but it's just fantasy. There's too many magical creatures in here to just not be fantasy. But it hits so many hard subjects, like, obviously the loss of a loved one, and grieving, there's found family, I cried. I devoured this book in a day and a half. It's probably the fastest I've ever read a book. I ignored every other responsibility that I have in my life. And when I was done, I was literally holding it with tears streaming down my face, and my husband's like, I guess it was a good book. Yeah, it was a good book, babe. It was phenomenal. So yes, there are the trigger warnings of death of a loved one, multiple dead. Like, obviously, that's why people come to the House of Frank, is because people have died. It's kind of like a funeral home in that sense. Like, people can come and have funerals and ceremonies of passing. But it's also about, like, grief and moving on and healing and all of that. It's just... I can't get over it. I'm still thinking about it, and how much, like, the more I talk about it, the more maybe I reread it. Maybe I just forgo all my other responsibilities and just reread it again. I don't know. It's beautiful, and it's lovely, and it is... It's great. You should read this. Like... Exactly. Okay, so on the back of it is a quote by Rebecca Thorne, who wrote Can't Spell's Treason Without Tea, and it says, wow, just wow, a heartbreaking, magnificent debut that offers space to sit with grief and reads like a warm hug. And that's just a perfect description of it. It's such a beautiful book, and everyone should read it. And Kay is also a delightful individual. So yeah, that is my top 11 for 2025. If you're here, if you've been watching these videos, you know I ramble a lot about things, and I should probably get better at that, but you know, it's me, and that's, you're getting me in the rawest of forms, because I don't ever make a script for these videos. I just start talking and see where they go. So yeah, hopefully I intrigued you enough with some of these reads to actually go pick them up and read them, because they're all phenomenal. If I intrigued you enough, if something caught your fancy, let me know in the comments below if you're going to pick any of these up, or if you've read any of these and you agree that they're great. Or even better, if you didn't agree, if you hated one of these books, if you DNF'd something that I have on this list, please let me know, because I like to talk about that. Books are subjective, and you're allowed to like what you like and allowed to not like what you don't like, and that's totally fine. I'm never going to fight with you about that. Like, I'm never going to try to convince you about a book. I know what I like. You know what you like. But I do want to talk about it, because it's fun. I like to conversate with people who like different things. It's interesting. And then, as always, if you don't want to say anything in the comments, just leave me a stack of books, because then I know that you're here and you watched the video, and I appreciate you more than you know. Trying to hit 100 subscribers this year. We're at 96. We're really, really close. I'd honestly like to hit like 500 this year, but let's get to 100 first, right? So if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button, as well as that big red subscribe button and the notification bell, so that you're always notified every time that I upload. And until next time, bye!